this idea that there's a natural impermeable boundary that starts at the Sahara Desert, and that there's no penetration, and that everybody who has quote unquote black skin is below that line historically, and everyone above that is somehow magically white, shows one, a real lack of knowledge of how space works and how geography functions and how mobility and movement in the ancient world function. It shows a very limited view of our ancient sources. Like I said, I think I said this in another clip, if you're gonna live by Herodotus, you gotta die by Herodotus too. And if you're gonna cite Herodotus for evidence of one thing, then you have to accept the fact that Herodotus says that the black people, Ethiopians in our ancient parlance, Ethiopians really in our ancient parlance, are indigenous to North Africa. They're indigenous to Libya, which is his word for basically everything north of Sahara, because our ancient sources were very clear that in that northern part of Africa, that's where Ethiopians lived, were indigenous to. That means there were black people there, but also the people that we refer to now as either Nubians or Cushites. Those were also called Ethiopians by our Greek sources, and they were in Egypt and they controlled Egypt for various times. And we actually have a lot of evidence, if you put Egypt into its African context in antiquity, its vision is not to the north, right? It looks to the Nile and to what we would call south, right? To the upper Nile, the upper Egypt. So we really just need to not think about this separation, which isn't even a modern separation, right? This idea of sub-Saharan is a modern racist trope, that there is a magic dividing line. And it is a modern racist trope that develops back from, I'm thinking I should do an N-gram, Google N-gram, just to see when the term sub-Saharan first pops up in books, right? Because one of the early scientists dealing with race back at sort of the turn of the 18th to 19th century, so 1801, 1802 or so, he's the guy who got Sarah Bartman's body after she died, the Hottentot Venus, and had it stuffed and had her genitals and things preserved for study. He makes clear comments about how taking the heads of mummies, which they were sort of just getting at this time out of Egypt, and her dead body and her face, and putting them together. And so here's this like 6,000 or 4,000 year old mummified head, which clearly is not in its original form, right? With her body, a model made of her, and says, look, it's very clear from looking at these two that regardless of whatever their skin color was, they're clearly different races.